everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project Live. We're so honoured that you joined us again today, and we're looking forward to bringing you another great interview and another great guest with this golden opportunity for you to also share your reflections about today's topic and ask questions live of our guest and get those questions answered in a live environment, which is something that we don't normally get to do with our normal podcast environment. So once again, without any further ado, we're going to get right into it today. Please tell us where you're joining from, what you're most excited about today, and we'd love to hear from you. So far we've got Gerald Calabo joining from the Philippines. So welcome, Gerald. Gerald is a regular watcher, and he's actually our social media manager, so it's always great to have Gerald joining us on the show. So thank you, Gerald. Please, anyone else that's joining today, let us know where you're joining from. We'll give people a little bit of time. We know sometimes it takes a little while to connect, and then we're going to get into our show today and all about horrible bosses. We've all had horrible bosses in the time, and there's something funny we're going to talk about today, which is that horrible bosses never think that they are a horrible boss. In fact, most of the time, they think they're doing an amazing job. And we're going to talk to our guest today about why that is and what people can do to build a bit of self-awareness about what's going on. We've got Joanne joining from Manila and hearing an echo at the moment. So thank you for letting me know that. Let's see if we can fix that up. How is that now, Joanne? Hopefully you can let us know if that echo has been addressed there. We've got Faris joining in from Singapore. Great to see you, Faris. And we've got Irene joining also from Manila in the Philippines. Wonderful. We've got this one coming through that says LinkedIn user dialing in for Northern Virginia, but I have a feeling that's Rocco, and Rocco joined us for our last live stream, and for whatever reason his tag is not coming in when he joins, but I think it is you, Rocco, and it's wonderful to see you here. Looking forward to hearing your comments about horrible bosses today and whether you've got any questions for our guest today. Before we do introduce our guest, I've got a few things that I'd like to share with you, some things around the Leadership Project. First of all, to let you know about our podcast episode that's live this week, which is with Charlie Fineman. Charlie is a award-winning strategist and a brand storyteller, and he's the director of account strategy at Toyota Creative. So he's a good friend of mine as well. We've worked together on multiple brand launches. Very clever guy. And he's going to talk on the podcast this week. If you get a chance to listen to it, he talks about why branding is so important and some of the misconceptions about what brand is, including a really powerful message that brand is not what you say it is. It's what they say it is. It's what other people talk about you when you're not in the room, whether it's your brand as a leader or whether it's a brand that you're reflecting on in terms of the business that you're in, the team that you're in. It's what other people say about you is really what your brand is. He's also an amazing storyteller, so he shares with us the power of storytelling and why storytelling makes it such a memorable experience for the person that's receiving the story, but also how it triggers them into a decision-making process. So please do catch the podcast. And a little hint, we'll talk about this at the end of today's show. He's also our guest on the live stream next week. So if you get a chance to listen to the podcast this week, you can then prepare your questions and have them answered by an award-winning brand strategist on our show here on the Leadership Project Live next week. So for this week, what we have is Marcel Daane. And Marcel was our guest on episode 51. Marcel is an executive coach. He was the Executive Coach of the Year in Singapore in 2020. He's a lifelong martial artist, and he helps people to become a better boss. He himself admits that he was once a horrible boss, and we'll talk about that today. We're going to talk about that moment of self-realization and to see exactly where that all came from and how he now helps other people. So he goes through this journey. He becomes a martial artist, but he's also a neuroscientist. He's got this amazingly diverse background that leads him to be where he is today. And he's the author of 2 books. One is Headstrong Performance, and the other one is The 5 Energies of Horrible Bosses and How Not to Become One. And it's that second book that is going to be the focus of most of what we talk about today. So a few kind of announcements as we get ready. It is Rocco that is the LinkedIn user that's come in unnamed. So thank you. I don't know why your name is not coming through, but I picked up the location and that it was probably going to be you, Rocco. So it's wonderful to have you here, and thank you for joining. As we do bring our guest on now, please remember to put your questions into the chat. So whether you're joining on LinkedIn or you're joining on Facebook, put those comments in. And it'd be greatly appreciated if you can put a Q in front of the question. That will help Marcel and I to be able to work out what was a comment versus what was a question, so that we can make sure that we focus on what's important to you. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Marcel onto the stage now. And Marcel, please do go ahead. Introduce yourself to our audience and let us know a little bit more about this discovery and what led you to write your new book.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you for having me, Mick. I mean, it's always great being on your show. Just doing a sound check as well, just making sure there's no echoes or anything like that. Because am I coming through clearly?
You're coming through quite well, Marcel, but I'm having to do a little funny thing that I wasn't expecting to do today, which is I'm muting you when I'm talking and I'm muting myself when you're talking. So I'm going to be multitasking, which I know doesn't work, but we're going to battle through this. So
Yeah, no worries. And actually, it's not multitasking, as you could read in my first book. It's actually called task switching. What you're doing, and you're rapidly switching tasks. The only downside for you is it takes up 30% more brain power than just doing a single task. So make sure that you recover at the end of the session doing all of that task switching. So yeah. So what's my background? As Mick you said so beautifully. I'm a lifelong martial artist. And on top of that, I'm an executive coach. And very often, people ask me, right? They say, whenever you go to a party or something like that, and there are people that you don't know or don't know, the first question that people tend to ask is, "What do you do?" Right, for a living? And I always find it such an interesting question, because it's like, who cares, right? But really, for me, the question is, I'm a father first, right? So that's usually my answer is, you know what, I'm a father first, I'm a husband second, and then I'm an executive coach third, and an author fourth, right? So kind of in that order is what I do, and I take great pride in the first 2 jobs that I dedicate most of my life to, at being as great as I can be as a parent and as a husband. But in the I guess in this space, right? As an executive coach, that's how I make my living. And funny enough is I came to this discovery, of making a living as an executive coach by failing at pretty much everything else. And so I've the way I like to introduce myself is, they always say, right, who can't do teach, right? And which of course is not the case, because my wife is a teacher, and I'll tell you, she's amazing at what she does. But in my case, it's kind of true. I got fired from every single job that and it's been 11 over my career that I got fired from, including my own company, right? So I'm an expert at getting fired, and I learned along the way. I learned a number of very important things about myself that helped me contribute to the careers of people today, right? By learning through my errors and my mistakes and the things that I have not done. And for the longest time, I really walked around kind of thinking I was a failure, when in reality, I'm not a failure. My brain is just designed differently. And I talk about, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see I open it with a quote, which is supposedly from Einstein. that said, if we judge a fish by the way it can climb a tree, it will live its life believing it's stupid. And in many ways, I'm a fish, and I believe that some of the listeners today are probably also fish, right? Who are designed to be at their best while they're swimming, while they're living in the water. But the unfortunate thing is that the corporate structure is what I like to call the tree climbing culture, right? People. It's great for tree climbers, and those tree climbers do really well in that corporate structure. I was just never a tree climber. I don't have claws to climb trees. I have fins, and it was when I realized for myself that was not the environment for me to flourish. Then things started to change for me with that level of acceptance. And I think a lot of that boils down to how we function in the workplace today. I come across tremendous amounts of leaders even who are actually not designed to be tree climbers, who they themselves might be birds, or they might be fish, or they might be something else. And even though they have climbed, right, this tree of this corporate tree that they've been climbing up, it's been tremendously hard for them. And something that I like to kind of share with them is that the fact that they've learned how to climb a tree as a different animal is amazing, right? And so if you find yourself kind of struggling in your career and asking yourself, why am I not getting promoted? Why am I not making it? It's probably because you're designed to be a different animal. And as once you can connect with being that different animal, rather than trying to be the tree climber that you think you need to be, that is when you can really start finding what makes you stand out as an individual, as a leader, as a boss. And it's those strengths that you bring, right, that you might not be considering at all today, that are actually what's going to make you amazing at what you do. And I did exactly the same for myself. And when I came to that realization for myself that I wasn't designed to be a corporate animal, it was that difference. The fact that I embraced being a fish made me so much more valuable to the average leader, because I look at the way they run their careers and they live their lives and they run their businesses through the eyes of a fish and not through the eyes of a tree climber. And if you're always surrounding yourself with tree climbers, you're never going to see the perspective of a bird, of a fish, or any other animal that just happens to not live on a tree. And so for a leader, that is the most important thing. And that's what kind of inspired me to write the book, Five Energies of Horrible Bosses, because at the end of the day, it's having that awareness. It's being aware that when we get stuck in our own belief systems, seeing only tree climbers surrounding us and only having tree climber type conversations and having expectations of everybody around us to be a great tree climber, without actually looking for other animals that live in the forest and to be able to leverage on their and appreciate their expertise, we limit our own way of thinking. And that is one of the challenges of any boss, right? And that the more fixed we become in believing our own thought systems and our own belief systems, the more we limit our perspective, and thus the greater the chance becomes that we end up being a horrible boss, because we get so stuck in that certain perspective, and we therefore don't open ourselves up to the talents and the possibilities that's actually surrounding us in the rest of the forest.
There's three really powerful things that are coming out for me there, Marcel, that I'd like to reflect back to you and get your thoughts on. And I want to build on the analogy around the fish climbing the tree and Einstein's famous quote. So our view here at the Leadership Project is that every single person on this planet has got a superpower or more than one superpower quite often, but they also have their own kryptonite. So having this perspective that the leader's job is to work out what are those superpowers of those different individuals, and to be able to create the environment where those superpowers flourish and where the team collectively can manage around the kryptonite and to manage around the weaknesses that might exist in that team. The second thing that comes to mind there is then also that you don't have to be good at everything. Don't expect your team to be good at everything. Don't expect yourself to be good at everything. No one can be good at every single facet of the business. So one of the mistakes that many leaders make is to think that they have to be the answer to every question, to think that they have to be good at everything, and that sets themselves up for a bit of failure from the outset. And then the third one that I want to reflect on was your point about embracing that fish, being that fish, and showing up as your authentic self is the secret to being successful, but also maybe joy and happiness where you're not trying to be someone that you're not. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. And and something that I work with a lot of leaders, and whether you're a CEO or an emerging manager, anybody that has some form of leadership role, and so very often, and I call it the Superman syndrome, right? Where we all believe that we need to be the superhero that is there to save the day and to fix things, and that's not what a leader's role is at all, right? A leader's role, in my opinion, is to set their people up for success and then to get the hell out of the way, right? And the only way we can do that is by admitting that we're not superheroes at all, right? That we're just normal human beings, and that we have our limitations, and that we are if anything should be a super strength, is the ability to see, not only see the strengths in our people, but also help them see their own strengths. And very often we go through life always being reminded of our weaknesses, always being reminded of the things that we can't do or that we're not doing well enough. How many times don't we hear of managers and even just regular employees always receiving feedback from their bosses, or their senior leaders, that things aren't good enough, right? And we hear that as a so-called driver, right, all the time. And the unfortunate thing about that messaging is that language is powerful. And if I am, as a manager, saying to my people, your work is not good enough, what I'm really saying to them, or what they're hearing, is you're not good enough. And they are good enough. That's why they were hired into your company. If they weren't good enough, they would not be hired into your company. And so every single person that works with you is good enough. If you're not seeing that, then it's either has to do within your ability to see the strengths in people, or it's in your ability to teach them how to see their own strengths and be able to leverage on those and be able to celebrate those. And that's where we don't do enough work. I think we're still always in that space of that negative reinforcement, rather than coming from a space of support and encouragement. And if a leader has any form of superpower, I think it's helping a person find their own strengths and their own superpowers.
I'd like to build on that a little bit, Marcel. So we had Stephen Shedleski on the show last week, absolutely amazing, and talking about speak up culture or psychological safety. And one of his famous quotes that I love is, it's really hard to read the label of the jar from inside the jar. And people don't always see what other people see. And the leader can help with that. They can be that solar panel, they can be that mirror to hold up to someone and say, look at what the rest of the world sees. The second part is then about the conversational intelligence, about the language that you use and what they're hearing. It's not what you say, it's what they're hearing and what they're taking away. And it's your responsibility as the leader to make it sure that your messages are crystal clear. And what I'd like to ask you about is then something that I try to do, and I'm not great at giving feedback, to be honest, Marcel, but I'm getting better and better at it, is to be specific. So instead of just saying to someone, you did a great job or you didn't do good enough, to say, you did a wonderful job, and what I loved was when you did these things. And you know what? That was a really good job, but the things that you need to work on are, and to be specific about where they need to go. Otherwise, it's very hard for them to implement that feedback. Any reflections on that, Marcel?
Yeah, I do. You know, and it reminds me of actually a book that was just released by another amazing executive coach. His name is Marcus Marsden, and he just wrote a book that says "Start with Who." And when it comes down to feedback, I think Marcus is spot on in that, you know, it's not about the what, right? The what you're doing. It's about who you are in that space. And I've when I work with my leaders with regards to feedback, I always encourage them to first ask that question, like, how do you feel yourself showing up when you're doing this task, and how do you feel about how you did this task? What do you think you could do better? What would you like to see different? Right? You know, and what's amazing is that people have a tendency, our employees have a tendency to be harder on themselves than we are on them. And when they have the space to come back with their perspectives on how they feel that they need to be working, very often it's way more expectations of themselves than we could ever have of them. And so that when we start giving feedback, you know, without necessarily asking for how they are in their space, we can misdirect them, right? Because we can make the conversation about me. We can make the conversation about this is what I want. But it's not about what I want. It's about how do you feel when you're working, and that's the empathy space. And empathy is such an important component of how we can live. And this is where the energy component becomes so important in these type of situations, right? And one of the reasons why, you know, I wrote that book about energy is because it's the type of energy that you bring into that feedback, for example, that is going to either help that person really kind of explore themselves more and challenge themselves and, you know, do all of those kind of things, or walk away from this kind of, you know, being feeling a little kind of more of the sour grapes rather than really kind of feeling encouraged and empowered. And that's why understanding the energy that you're bringing into that conversation, and the moment that I feel a need to speak to you, I'm already projecting a certain energy. There's a different energy between speaking and listening. And great leaders do more listening than they do speaking. And so if you're already a leader who feels like you need to share your perspective, you need to be able to kind of tell people what you think you're doing and sharing your perspective, you're living in a certain energy, which is either a determined or a heavy energy. And those energies can be great energies. You know, being determined and making sure that we're moving forward and all of those kind of things, and you know, getting people to buy into your ideas and your vision can all be great stuff. But there's also a downside to being determined, is that when a person is not ready to receive your determined energy, they can sense that energy as being a little bit aggressive, right? And maybe even a little bit violent. And you might not have that intention at all as a leader, but that's how it can be received. So if you want to come in with determined energy, you have to make sure that the people that you're interacting with, and I liked how you used, you know, the conversation intelligence, you know, and I call it the interaction quotient, right? Your IQ, which is really around understanding the quality of the interaction that you're bringing to the meeting or to the table. And that interaction quotient is measured by the number of high quality interactions you can have within the shortest amount of time, because that is what dictates, and it's the only determining factor that dictates whether or not a team or an organization is going to be successful. The higher the quality of interactions you can have within the shortest amount of time, it's going to mean that people are more motivated, they feel safer, they're getting more quality conversations done. So therefore, they're getting more done. Productivity will go up, and hence, therefore, also profitability. Right? You know, and it all starts with that energy, is understanding what energy are you bringing. So if you already feel the need to give feedback without it being asked for, that is already a certain energy. You can be really nice about it, but it's already a certain energy that you're bringing to the table. And my advice would be is make sure that whoever you want to be giving energy or feedback to is ready to receive that energy. That's a very important thing, and that comes with asking permission, right? Is it okay if I kind of put this energy on you? And if the person's not ready, they're not ready, and it's not a good time to do it, right? So always be aware of the type of energy you're bringing into any type of situation is going to help you set some of those ground rules and make sure that whatever it is that you're bringing is also going to be received in the right way.
Yeah, thank you, Marcel. And I think that's a really nice build. And I like this concept that you're listening first. And as part of doing that, you're also building an assessment of self awareness and self discovery. And if the person is already aware of where that issue might be, then you're already partway along the journey, because if they've got the self awareness, they can do something about it. And then you're also holding space. You're holding space for self discovery. And if they discover a solution to whatever it is that they're going through at that moment themselves, they'll always remember it forever if they discovered it themselves rather than something that someone else told them or advice that someone gave them, because no one actually wants advice. They want to make their own choices about what they do and how they live their lives. And then the third part is that energy matching. And I want to come back to that shortly, because that's a big thing that I took from your book around the 5 energies of horrible bosses, is about how you match that energy and understand the energy that the other person is bringing to the conversation and your energy and the impact that it can have. And then the important message about having those very rewarding engagements with people. And because it's relationships that make us successful, it's not our individual prowess, etc. And if you can build those engagements, that's wonderful. So I'd like now to go to our a question from the audience, because it was about feedback. And then we'll segue on towards some of these things around energies and postures. So from Joanne, I love the fish analogy, Marcel. It allows me to see people for who they are and the gifts they bring. How do you bring awareness to a horrible boss in a company where feedback is not the acceptable culture? So horrible boss that may not have any awareness that they are a horrible boss, and maybe the culture is not set up for those feedback loops. What's your view on that?
Yeah, fantastic. And what a wonderful question. And it was Joanne, right, that asked the question. So thank you, Joanne. That was fantastic. So there are a couple of things in this scenario, right? A couple of variables. There is number one. There is the boss, right? The character who is behaving a certain way and may even have created a certain culture, right, within the organization. But then there is also you as a character in the story, in terms of how are you receiving the energy from your boss, right? And what kind of energy is that putting you into? Because an energy transfer is always a two-way street. And what I find is that what we are most affected by is not necessarily the decisions that make and what they're doing. It really is that energy that they bring to the table. And when a certain, we've all heard the term energy donor versus energy vampire, for example, right? Is that one person can walk in the room and just sucks the life force out of everybody, versus another person walks into the room and just energizes everybody in a certain way, right? We can't really put our finger on what is it that they're doing differently, but we know that there is this energy transfer. We also know that we feel different when this type of leader or this type of person walks into the room. And so what you're saying, right, is how do I manage how I feel, right, when this person is in the room with me, or when this person is behaving and doing the things that they're actually doing. And that is your first step, is to be aware what type of energy does that person trigger within you, right? And so to make this simple, right? So there are 5 different energies, hence the 5 energies, and you're going to feel one of those 5 energies from this person, right? And so what those energies are, I want you to think of a compass, right, going north, south, east, and west, which are the 4 points, and then with one right in the middle of those 4 points. And what those 4 points are is, if you look at an east-west axis, it is on one side, it's determined energy, which I mentioned earlier, which is a forward-moving, driving energy, very task-oriented, very much kind of like, hey, these are the things that we need to do, and this is where we need to go, and this is what we need to apply, and all of that kind of stuff. On the opposite end of that spectrum, on that east-west axis, is the inviting energy. And inviting energy is really about being receptive. It's about being able to listen. It's being able to be open to perspectives. It's your ability to feel empathy, for example. Your ability to connect with another human being lives on that other end of that spectrum. And this inspired me through the concept of yin and yang, which of course I learned through martial arts. Is that is a pushing and pulling type of energy, and that works in a horizontal type flow. And so that's your east-west type axis. And then there's also a north-south axis, which in the north is up in the sky, which is what we call light energy. And this comes from the chakras, from kind of understanding the chakras that run along our spine, right? And we have the light energy, which is about being joyful, having fun, about being kind of spontaneous, carefree, creative. All of those kind of things live in that stratosphere of when we're up in the clouds and we're having a good time. And of course, the opposite of that is being in the earth, right? Is being grounded, and I call that heavy energy, because what that does is it makes us feel heavier. And heavy energy is a place where we feel self-protective, for example, where we stand strong with our values, where we're thinking about doing the right thing, for example, being having the right procedures, all of those kind of things. The language of should and should not, and right and wrong, and all of those kind of things live in heavy energy. And of course, in the middle of all of that is what I call neutral energy, which is neither of those four, but it is a space of mindfulness, of awareness, of balance, right? And what I teach in this process is for you to understand what energy this boss creates for you. Now, you might find yourself being a person who lives for the most part in either inviting or light energy. And that when this person walks into the room, you immediately feel your own energy sinking into the ground, and you feel yourself becoming really heavy. So what that means is that this person's presence or their way of operating, could even be their emails, already drives heavy energy in you, and it makes you feel like you need to pursue a safe place. You need to be safe. So in other words, you're feeling unsafe in that moment, right? And that moment of awareness, to say to yourself, am I going to give this human being permission to push me into an energy that I don't want to be in at this moment in time? That's a very important question to ask yourself, because of course that person doesn't have the permission to push you into an energy. You can decide what energy you want to be in at any moment of the day. You can receive this boss, this person, in any of the 4 or 5 energies. You don't have to be in heavy energy. And this is what's most important, is energy is not personality. We live in all 5 energies. It's just a matter of, are we going to choose to be in a certain energy? Can I receive what this boss is bringing while being a light energy? Right? Can I be carefree? Can I not really care so much about what this person is saying and what they're doing, right? Or can I be more an inviting energy and kind of say, hey, can I approach this, what they're trying to do, with maybe more empathy, with more, kind of be more open to, what are their needs? Where are they coming from? And what is it maybe that's driving energy within them? So step 1 is being aware of what energy this creates for you. Step 2 is to then say, hey, what energy do I want to be in? Right now, the only way you can make that choice is if you pull yourself into neutral energy first. Right? So neutral energy is probably the energy we spend the least amount of time in, but it's also the most important energy, because the moment that you can pull yourself into neutral energy, you're already unaffected by anything that's actually going on. And then from there, you can consciously shift yourself into a different energy and use that energy to be able to connect better with that boss. Because as Mick, when Mick opened up, he said so beautifully that bosses aren't aware that they're being horrible bosses to you. right? They actually think they're doing an amazing job. And the same counted for me when I was a horrible. I thought I was amazing at what I was doing, only to discover that I was, kind of screwing up my own business. And I learned that the hard way. And that was for me a trigger, right? Which actually made me become such a much better executive coach, because I understood the importance of kind of how we are affecting the people around us without even necessarily knowing or thinking that we're doing so. So what I would like to recommend to you is to simply play with that, right? To kind of say, hey, what energy is this person triggering in me, and why is that there, right? And can I receive this person in a different energy? Can I choose differently, right? And just to see what happens if you do that without changing anything, without changing how you're talking to them, without giving them feedback, without anything. Just choose to be in a different energy and see whether or not this person actually responds differently to you when you're in this different energy. Because that's the interplay of energy, is your energy already changes energy. You might not have to say anything other than just be in a different energy. And there's beauty around that. Of course, I do teach my leaders how to help another person shift energy, but that's what I call the energy mastery program, and that takes time to learn how to do that. It takes a lot of practice. But start with just that awareness of, hey, what energy am I in, and what energy do I want to be in? Yeah, that could be a really good question for you.
Yeah, that's amazing, Marcel. And there's three key things that I take from that, but I want to start with a quick summary of the energies for the audience, because there's a lot to absorb here, and you've put a lot of work into this, Marcel. So the first one is that difference between inviting energy versus determined energy, and where are you on that continuum? And then we've got light energy versus heavy energy, and where are you in that continuum? And in the middle is that neutral energy, and I'll come back to neutral in a moment. The first thing I heard when you were describing these people that walk in the room and change the energy as soon as they come in, and the ones that do it in a positive way. You lived in New Zealand for a lot of years, Marcel, so you probably heard this term, I think, many times. In New Zealand, we call that mana. Someone that walks into the room and everyone just gravitates and is interested in what they've got to say and want to be with them. There's something special about them, and it's hard to put it into an English translation. It's just mana. It's that presence that they have when they walk in the room. That was the first one. The second one was really interesting for me, and it's not where I thought you were going to go with it, but I learned something new on the show every single day, and this is my new one for today. Is you asked Joanne to start with her own energy, right? So if she's going to go to that horrible boss and give some kind of feedback and fight for what is right, the first thing I was hearing is that no one can influence how you feel except for yourself, was something I took away from that. So having some self-awareness and thinking about, well, what energy am I projecting right now? Am I inviting? Am I determined? Am I light? Am I heavy? And kind of bringing yourself to that neutral ground first, consciously, before you make a decision as to what you're doing next. And then the third part is where I thought you were going to go from the outset, is to then start reading the energy of that other person. Are they in a receptive mood? Are they in an inviting mood right now? Or am I just going to be beating my head against the wall, and maybe there'll be a better time for us to have that conversation? How's the summary of the three things there, Marcel?
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's exactly it. And the beauty of this system, right, is that it gives you control. It gives you control over how you're responding to your life in general, right? To any type of situation that you might be in. You might think of your job, for example. You may have gone to work this morning going, oh my God, I hate having to go to work. It's to simply ask yourself, well, what energy am I in right now? What energy is this thought process of me hating my job putting me in? And can I choose to be in light energy while I'm hating my job? Right? It's like, why do I need to be in heavy energy to hate my job? Why is that the only choice available to me? right? And what would that look and feel like for me if I chose to be in light energy and hate my job, or in inviting energy and hate my job, and in determined energy and hate my job? What would that look like for me? And what possibilities could open up for me if I chose to be in a different energy? And that power of choice, right, gives a person so much control over how they are running their businesses, leading their lives, doing whatever, without necessarily really having to kind of do any heavy lifting, other than just kind of choosing a different energy. And that's what makes it such a beautiful system, is we don't have to do as much as we think we have to do, right? We have a tendency to overcomplicate the hell out of our lives, and then make things seem so much bigger and harder for us to do, when in reality it's just a matter of shifting our own energy, and then to say, hey, what if I chose differently? And amazing how things just change for us, right? And of course, when we change our energy, other people feel that energy. That's the interesting thing about it, because if I walk into the office and I'm already feeling like I want to hate my job today, and that pulls me into heavy energy, guess what? I'm going to be an energy vampire that day, right? But I don't need to be. I can choose to not like my job and still be in light energy. And how would that potentially affect my environment? And what if my environment, right, is more kind of enlightened, inviting energy, and with a little bit of determined, maybe a little bit of heavy here and there, when things need to be heavy. But other than that, we can be in a space that is way more organic, right? And what I like to, and I mentioned this in my book too, it's kind of like being in a climate that's inviting, being in a climate that's kind of has an overall energy of all of the energies combined of everybody in the office. That is a place where we want to be, right? Because at the end of the day, the organization's culture and the climate is really nothing more than the collective energies of everybody that's in that office that day. And if everybody just chooses a different energy, things change immediately, simply by, and we feel it just by being present. And that is what starts everything. And so if you look at the back of my book, you'll see that the first sentence of my book is what sets a great boss apart from a horrible boss is the awareness of the energy that they're projecting onto other people. And if we're aware of the energy that we're projecting onto other people, it changes everything, simply from being able to make a conscious choice of the type of energy we want to bring. And right now, I can guarantee you that the majority of you aren't consciously choosing what energy you're projecting. You're just living in a default energy, right? That's an energy that you're subconsciously just naturally gravitating to. And that comes through practice, right? We practice a certain energy and we get really good at it. And then when we get really good at it, we live in that energy. And that can be a challenge, because every energy has its pros and cons, and it's often the cons of that energy that you're feeling in your life that are things that you're not happy with, right? And so that ability to choose changes everything. And what's remarkable about it is you can learn it in 5 minutes.
That's really amazing, Marcel. So, what I'd like to press on there is that element there of choice, for sure. Element there of habit, and whether you're making the energy work for you or against you is what I'm hearing there. And I think Irene's question in the chat now really kind of is a great segue from that to hear your thoughts on this one. So, when you're at times where you might be lacking motivation, is it better to fake energy or simply show up exactly how you feel?
The the first thing is, what I would like to say is, you can't fake energy. Energy is energy. Energy is all around us, right? It's our ability to be aware of what type of energy we're actually in. That is key. And I teach this in my first lesson of the energy mastery, is to simply be consciously aware of the energy that you're in. And if you don't like the energy that you're in, change it, right? But consciousness is key. And when we live in that energy without necessarily the conscious awareness, that's when really the challenges occur, right? So you don't have to fake anything. You have all of the five energies. You just have to you just have to choose and to be in one and practice learning to be in that energy. And I one thing I can guarantee you is that if you simply played with all five energies, you can choose to have a certain mindset. You can choose to have a certain thought process and be in a different energy. You can just choose that for yourself. There's no faking that. You can choose to be in light energy and not like what you're doing. For example, if you're lacking motivation, what does a lack of motivation look like in heavy energy for you? How do you feel? How do you carry yourself, for example? On the other hand, how does a lack of motivation look for you in light energy? What does that look like? Are you laughing it off? Are you distracting yourself? Are you doing whatever it is? But find out for yourself what a lack of motivation means for you in all five of those energies, and then find the one that you say, hey, this is actually kind of a good place for me to be, and then choose to be in that energy. But you don't have to be more motivated. Nobody is telling you in this world that you have to be motivated. To be honest, I think that's kind of a bit of a cop out, is that we have to be motivated to do our jobs and all of that kind of stuff, when in reality you're a human being. You're allowed to be demotivated. You're allowed to not want to go to work, because you're human. But you can choose the energy that you can be in that thought process that you want to be, and just play with that and see what happens. See what happens in your motivation. Your motivation might change, it might not, but it's going to feel different. You're going to experience your demotivation differently, right, than if you just choose to stay in one energy and experience only that one energy. And it's that playing with it, it's that adaptivity, it's that versatility, right, that is going to give you options. And it's those options that end up leading to something better.
That's amazing, Marcel, and thank you for sharing that. And it comes back to that self-awareness again. And we got a wonderful comment here from Ryan Charam in the chat. Ryan's a very great friend of mine and also had a huge influence on my life. I'd love to introduce the two of you. The two of you would get along famously. And his comment, awareness of the energy, just loves this concept. So yeah, it's very much resonating with Ryan. It's resonating with me. And also from Irene, oh wow, brilliant. So, and she's doubled down, mind blown. So thank you so much for these insights. I'd like to go back to a question now from Rocco. Any advice or observations on how to manage the energy of conversation specific to remote? So we are spending a lot of time on Zoom calls now and other remote work. Where does energy come in remote work and work from home, Marcel?
That's a wonderful question, and it happens a lot. And it's actually one of the reasons why I wrote the book when I wrote it, because I'm a human being who loves to connect with other human beings. And when COVID hit in 2020, I actually started to feel depressed when I wasn't connecting with people in a face-to-face way, and had to learn how to connect with people virtually. And what I discovered was that actually energy is a great way for us to connect, because you can be all the way across the globe, right, which you are, right, and we can still connect with our energy, because energy travels at the speed of light. There is no boundary. All we need to do, right, is to consciously project that energy and towards each other, and to really kind of try and connect with that energy with each other. And you'll actually find what I've learned, and I've done this with entire kind of keynote speeches where I had hundreds and hundreds of people, and I had them all connect with their energy. And it was amazing, the experience that people had was like, wow, it feels like I'm in the same room with this person. That's the power of learning how to project, being consciously aware of the energy you're projecting, and then really trying to connect that energy first before you try to connect with talking about subject matter and all of these. Just connect as human beings energetically, and just take a few moments to do that. And it's amazing what comes out of that process. And I highly recommend, if you're on a lot of virtual calls, is to take that moment to allow yourself to just connect energetically with that person, right, before you even create any other type of biases and ideas and thoughts about what that person might be thinking and doing, just to connect energetically. So where is this person's energy? Where's my energy? Let's connect, and then see what happens there. What level of empathy, right, can open up for you with that other person, despite the fact that they're across the world. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah, some great insights there, Marcel. And I think everyone knows that, right? So you can feel it when someone else is on a Zoom call and they're not really there. So I think it begins with mindfulness, being mindful of your own energy, and come back to that self-awareness again. Being mindful, being there and in the moment, because you know yourself when someone else, I'm going to say, is disrespectful and their mind is elsewhere, they're doing other things. You feel it. So bring that energy, be self-aware of your own energy, and I think you can project it down the Zoom line, if you like. Got another great question from Faris, and maybe this will be our last question, and then I want to give you the opportunity for some closing words as well, Marcel. And we know you've got a coaching client waiting for you, so we don't want to keep you any longer than that as well. So Faris's question: job interviews. Job interviews are two-way. You're interviewing the candidate, and the candidate is interviewing that organization to decide whether they want to join the team or not. Any tips on how you can look for warning signs of a potential horrible boss during that interview process?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I actually work with quite a number of people who are looking for a new job and how to use their energy to be able to kill an interview, and it understand that the interview, especially if it's the first time you're meeting, is it starts with the interplay of energy. Understand that if you're not connecting with that person's energy, and you're having difficulty kind of connecting, chances are you guys are going to have difficult connecting when you're out working together as well, right? So trust that gut feeling that you have of that connection that you might feel, right? And if you prefer to work with a boss, for example, who lives in inviting energy, right? Try to detect that energy. If you prefer to work with a boss who's very determined, right? Try to detect that energy. But remember that what makes a person a horrible boss is their lack of awareness of the energy that they're projecting onto you, right? And so that, if you're aware of the energy that they're projecting onto you, you can choose, right? You can say, hey, this is the kind of environment, for example, that I'm not comfortable. I don't want to live in a place of determined energy where everything is task oriented. On the other hand, you might want to live there, right? And so you can make your own personal judgments of the type of energy in the environment simply based on the energy that you're feeling from that boss. But that's never, people aren't either, because that's kind of the interesting thing of the disclaimer in my book is there are really no horrible bosses. There are people who we interpret, who we sense, right? Who generate an energy within us that make us feel bad, right? And we then have a tendency to coin them a horrible boss. But they're just human beings. They're just people who think that they're doing a good job. They're just people who are trying to do, but they're just living in their default energy. So you can choose as a prospective employee, you can choose to say, hey, is this the kind of energy I want to live in, right, as a job? Or maybe not. And what is the type of company? What is the organization? What is the type of culture that I do want to be in? What type of energy does this culture project that I feel most at home in? And what that's going to do, it's going to give you some more markers as to whether or not the company is a right fit for you. One thing I can tell you is that you are always the right fit for a company. The question should be is whether or not that company is the right fit for you, right? And as a prospective employee, you always want to walk into an interview asking that question. You're always the right person because you're amazing. You're an amazing human being. Why wouldn't you be? But the key is that company the right company for you, right? And don't be afraid to make that decision based on the energy transfer that you're receiving from that person.
Nice one, Marcel. Here goes another learning for me today. I've got two learnings so far in today. Bit of self-awareness here. I've got a reputation, Marcel, for being really tough in interview situations, like putting people through a bit of a pressure cooker environment. And in reality, that's not me. That's not the authentic self at all. What I'm trying to do, I'm not trying to justify my actions here, but I'm just talking it through. what I'm trying to do is see how the person will perform when the pressure's on. But the reality is that's not my style as a leader. And I don't think anyone that's ever worked for me has found me to be a high pressure type person. So, lesson learnt for me, I've got to think about the energy that I'm bringing to the interview process when I'm interviewing someone. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that lesson learnt today. So we do need to let you get to your coaching clients, but we'd like to leave you with some final words about how people can get in contact with you and Level 5 partners, and in particular, your free posture assessment. So please.
Yeah, great. So the easiest thing to do if you want to connect with me, of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. Name is Marcel Daane, Daane. Feel free to actually feel free to follow me. There's you can't connect with me, but you can follow, and through that I know who's following me, and I always like to connect with the audience. The other way is go to level5partners.com, which is levelvpartners.com, and go to the free assessment. You can actually assess for yourself what your default energy is, that subconscious energy that you have a tendency to live in. You can assess for yourself in 5 minutes. It's a free assessment. Go down there, take the assessment, have some fun with it, and you can connect with me through Level 5 Partners. Just once you've done the assessment, we'll already be connected. So that would be, the easiest way for you to do that. Of course, if you want to know more, there's plenty on the website, level5partners.com. And always feel free to reach out to me, through social media or whatever, if we do happen to be connected. And I'm always happy to try and help you out and see in what way I can support you.
Wonderful, Marcel. Thank you so much. We're getting great feedback in the comments as well. We've got Rocco saying simply amazing today, and lots to think about and to reflect on. So thank you so much for joining us. We're also putting in the links there to get in contact with you at your website, but also on your socials, and to get access to that free assessment. So we'll let you go because you need to run to your client, and we've got a few final messages for our audience, and I look forward to touching base with you soon. And I do want to connect you with Ryan Charam, Marcel. I think the two of you will get on famously. Thank you, Marcel. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to have you here again today. I'd like to share a few things with you as we close out. So we are now taking our intake, our application for the next cohort of our Gateway to High Performance Leadership Program. We really believe that we are flipping leadership development on its head with this program. We're embracing the techniques and the proven science of how people learn, using things like collaborative or social learning, using micro-learning and gamification to make sure that the leadership skills that you take away get turned into applied learning, things that you can put into practice immediately. So we're breaking that mold where someone might go on a 5-day leadership retreat and then all of a sudden they're blessed and they're considered to be a wonderful leader. So if you're interested in that, please get in contact with Joanne Goes On. Joanne.goes on at mixbeers.com to be able to get access to that program. I'm also really excited to tell you that my book is now with the Formatter. So we're now less than 2 weeks away from the publishing of You're a Leader Now. Now what? So You're a Leader Now What is about that emotional roller coaster that leaders go through when they do leadership transitions. And there's lots of wonderful lessons in there from my own experiences about what it takes to become a high performance leader. We would like you to be part of our book launch team. And as part of that, you get access to the book before anyone else, and you get it at a greatly reduced price. And in return, it's 99 cents. And in return, all that we ask you is to give an honest review on Amazon. What we're really doing here is we're trying to get traction for the book, and the Amazon algorithm, to be clear with you, those first few weeks are really important to see that there are purchases of the book and to see that there's honest reviews coming through for the book and that there's a bit of excitement. So we want to get on the bestseller list with this book, and we need a launch team to help us do that. And that's what we expect is you get access before anyone else, and you just give us an honest review of the book on Amazon, and it helps us greatly, and we know it'll help you because we're so confident in the content and the quality of the book. So we look forward to sharing that with you. We also have upcoming some free webinars about the 5 shifts that all leaders need to become a great leader, and also how to unlock your emotional intelligence. And those webinars are conducted at different times of day, depending on which part of the world you're in. So please look out for our notifications about those free webinars that are coming up shortly. And finally, to tell you that next week we will be back with the Leadership Project Live, and we will have my good friend Charlie Feineman on the show, award-winning strategist and brand storyteller, to tell us all about the importance of branding, what it really is, and the power of storytelling. And we can't wait to bring him onto the show next week. We have gone a couple of minutes over time, so I'm going to let you go now. But thanks again for your support. We really love having you here, and we will see you next week for the Leadership Project Live.